I'm saying so far. I mean, let's talk before we go on air. I'm
Okay.
just saying, well, what do you think about COP17 so far? Do you think that several issues that you think are of interest have been stressed out?
Well, I think so far it's going good, but in terms of the negotiation side, I'm like not in a position to can comment on that. But in terms of the youth and where the activities that we've been doing, I can be able to give information on that.
Like, what have you been doing?
We had an Africa Youth for Climate Change, where we basically wanted the youth to voice out their voice in terms of COP17, and also so that the youth can participate in making sure that they are part of so that they can be represented in COP17. And we also had cleanup campaigns.
Yes.
Where we invited the youth to be part of the cleanup so that we can link the theory to the practice of the actual COP.
Okay.
And we also had discussions around the youth plan that we are planning to do, which is going to be a platform for the youth to raise their voice in terms of the youth plan, in terms of their skills development, education and awareness, and
Okay. All right. By the way, my name is Colin. You can just address me as Colin. I'd like you to just give me your view. Just a second. Okay, how has COP17 been like in terms of the issues of interest for you?
I could. My voice is gone, by the way. Well, I can say that since you know that the negotiations, like, there's not much happening, you see. But then what I can say is that from the youth perspective,
Yes.
the youth is not. I can say they're not presented, or they're not that much involved in the negotiations, whereas it's our future that's going to be affected in the upcoming years. So.
do we have an exact direction to face, Colin?
Yeah.
Which direction should we face?
Yeah, you face me.
Okay.
The camera. All right. Okay, let's just recap because we don't know each other. Hello and welcome to the Durban Dialogues. A week has gone and many delegates at COP17, the Conference on Climate Change, have attended many plenary sessions in the coastal city of Durban, South Africa. So today on Durban Dialogues, we take the pulse and temperature of the conference and measure the successes and failures so far. The week has so far at COP17 been much wrangling about various nations around the much talked about Kyoto Protocol. The lifespan of the Kyoto Protocol may not be clinched. The dire warning came from the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Climate Change Conference, Cristina Figueres, who was speaking to the youth representatives from around the world via video conferencing. SABC journalist Janji Chauke takes a look at this. Hello and welcome to the Durban Dialogues. A week has gone and many delegates at COP17, the Conference on Climate Change, have attended many plenary sessions in the coastal city of Durban, South Africa. So today on Durban Dialogues, we take a pulse and temperature of the conference and measure the successes and failures so far. The week so far at COP17 has seen much wrangling by various nations around the much talked about Kyoto Protocol. A deal to extend the lifespan of the Kyoto Protocol may not be clinched. The dire warning came from the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Climate Change Conference, Christina Figueres, who was speaking to the youth representatives from around the world via video conferencing. SABC journalist Njanji Chauke takes a look at this. I can hear you faintly. Yeah. Okay. What's the help when? Try and come closer or what? You sound very, very faint. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Sure. Okay, so basically we will just get the feel when we discuss the specific issues that you don't think youth have been represented on.
Sorry?
The issues that you feel youth have not been represented on. I don't know if you want to talk about education, training, access to information and so forth.
Yeah, those are basically the main issues that we want to include on our youth plan that we are currently working on. For youth to be aware, to have like more education, and also to like things like skills development, funding and sponsorship for youth, like project initiatives that they are currently doing in making sure that climate change is that.
Yes.
What I would love to talk about it's the equalism between the two areas, which is the urban and the rural of the youth. They are basically not equal, because if you look at children who are in, so the access to information is not it's lacking.
Hello and welcome to the Durban Dialogues. A week has gone and many delegates at COP17, the Conference on Climate Change, have attended many plenary sessions in the coastal city of Durban, South Africa. So today on Durban Dialogues, we take a pulse and temperature of the conference and measure the successes and failures so far. The week so far at COP17 has seen much wrangling by various nations around the much talked about Kyoto Protocol. A deal to extend the lifespan of the Kyoto Protocol may not be clinched. The dire warning came from the Executive Secretary of the UN Climate Change Conference, Christina Figueres, who was speaking to the youth representatives from around the world via video conferencing. SABC journalist Njanji Chauke takes us further.
Young, intelligent and concerned about the environment, COP17 has been flooded with youth. These Canadians protesting the use of coal-based energy. They hope to raise funds from this symbolic bake sale and want their government to commit to a binding deal.
Canada is not rejecting Kyoto because they want a better agreement. They're rejecting Kyoto because they want to allow the tar sands and the polluting industries in Canada continue to go ahead.
At the Speaker's Corner, snowballing demonstrations, a symbolic funeral to bury King Coal. They want the world to go green.
We do what we can and we're working really hard and we are making progress now, but it is a big problem that we're not sitting at the table.
Although they make up the largest percentage of the world population, young people are not really represented at the negotiation table. And when the final draft is adopted at the end of COP17, their future would have been decided by politicians. The Executive Secretary interacted with young people.
These are decisions that governments take with huge political and economic consequences for their governments. It is the government representatives that need to take that risk.
Activists buried their heads in the sand and displayed the national flags of culprit carbon emitters. Njanji Chauke, SABC News, Durban.
Some of the issues that have been raised at COP17, of course, we are joined by our guests here who are introduced to later on. But of course, let me just tell you about the guests who are joining us right here on Durban Dialogues. With me, I see you have gone green with your top, Tabisile Ngume from the Leadership Training Project. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And of course, the coordinator of the project of the Youth Climate for Change, joining us here is Tembi Mahlangu. Thank you very much for joining us as well.
Thank you.
Tell us about the COP17 issues that have been threshed out so far. Your impressions?
My impressions have been that as South Africa is hosting COP17, issues around COP17 on sustainable development and green economy have been in more detailed. And we, as the youth, we would like to participate in the issues that take place in COP17, and to make sure that we as the youth, our voice is raised, and also that we play a role in the negotiations that also happen.
But with hindsight, the youth is raising this concern of not being represented in the talks. But whereas there were sessions to plan for this event, why didn't then you guys say you want to be involved in the actual discussions rather than making noise from the sidelines and wanting your voice to be heard?
What we have been doing in the past week is the Department of Environmental Affairs, together with youth organizations such as Love Life, NYDA, NYSDA, in Daluyotu, we organized an Africa for Youth for Climate Change, which in detail we had a 2-day youth conference, and which was also linked with African youth who also participated in the conference. The main aim of the conference was to give the youth the platform to raise their voice in terms of climate change and what we as the youth can do to reducing effects of climate change.
Tabisile, what has been your impression so far? I mean, people gathered here for over a week right now, and we hear that some of the young people are not really happy with the way things have been going.
Thank you for the opportunity. I would love to speak from the youth's perspective. My impressions on this COP is that the youth have not been presented, and this has come this is coming from a long way. One thing that I would like to talk about is the access to information from the youth side. The youth are not given information, and everyone can like talk about this. I'll just give you one example. You see, you can take a child from a rural area and compare it with the one from an urban area. You'd see a big difference on climate change issues. Actually, the one from an urban area would actually answer, if you would ask them questions, they would answer more questions like the one from a rural area, because the ones in urban areas, they have seminars, they have clubs, even at schools there are awarenesses about the climate change and COP17.
This seems to be a lack coming from the side of government. There are other young people who are saying that they only heard about climate change issues when they moved from rural areas to attend school at varsity, and they're hearing about the ozone layer for the first time when they're at varsity level, whereas at matric, in rural areas, in township schools, they do not get these issues exposed to them.
One of the elements that our youth project was looking at is education, awareness, and access to information. We can say that more people, let me say from the youth perspective, we are not that more aware of climate change, what it is. I think if we can have more education and more awareness program that we can raise in terms of teaching people about climate change, as climate change also affect their livelihoods, we can be able to move forward and also better educate people on the ground about climate change.
Let's get to the specific issues. I mean, you know that it's either it's too hot or it's too cold. Young people get affected. People mostly in rural areas are the ones who have to chop down the trees so that they can make fire. It's their source of energy. Now, the issue of biodiversity and so forth. Do you think that as young people, civil society, and in conjunction with the government, something can be done to actually get to the young people so the young people can be involved in planning their future?
Well, I think absolutely that is true. Many things can be done if the government and the civil society can join together, because you find that the government, there are many things that they are doing, and also the NGOs, but then they do not want to interact. But then if they would interact, many things would happen, and the youth, the future of the youth would actually go forward if they would work together.
Okay, let's nip it there. Time to take a quick break. Durban Dialogues continues shortly. You will tell me, then we'll take it from there.
I'll do that.
Okay. Welcome back. You're watching Durban Dialogues live from the ICC in Durban, and you're welcome to send us your views on our Facebook page, the Durban Dialogues. Now we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be having other panelists who will also be making an input regarding COP17 and the issues that have been raised. And right now, as I continue with my guest, and I'm with Stabile Ngume from the Women Leadership Training Program, and of course Tembi Mahlangu from the Department of Environmental Affairs. Let's get to the specifics. I'll start with you, Stabisile. You know that many people have come to COP17 to come and take a position regarding mitigation and also other issues regarding adaptation. What has not impressed you regarding the specific issues that affect young people and women?
Okay, thank you. What I would love to talk about is the education system that we have here in South Africa and in other countries. If climate change if the government wants to take climate change seriously, it should start from an early age. For example, they should do curriculums on climate change in schools from primary up until high school, so that the children will grow knowing these things, and so that they will live with them and do something.
But who has to teach young people not to litter? Who has to teach young people not to focus on some career-bashing activities like drinking, engaging in teenage sex and teenage pregnancy and so forth? What are young people doing themselves? Are they not able to open their eyes and see what's happening around their environment?
Okay. What can be done is that we can. Because at school you cannot learn everything. You can learn things from NGOs, group organizations like the ones we have, Women's Leadership and Training Program, where we take our young girls and teach them on life skills and teach them on environmental issues, because you cannot learn all those things from school. So the other thing is that you can learn these kind of issues from home.
Mm-hmm. What's your view? I mean, I would wonder what the concerns of the youth are in terms of how they are affected on a daily basis. I mean, there's issues of food security. Many young people go to school hungry, on an empty stomach. Some of them at schools don't even have access to water. They don't have access to resources. So then what should government do at that level, not only at negotiating at COP17, but going back to the communities, talking to the youth and doing something about their plight?
We as the government recognize that youth play a very important role in terms of climate change and making people aware and educating people. I think from a government perspective, we can leverage in the programs that are already available in terms of making people to understand more about climate change. Here at COP17, we had exhibitions where local municipalities exhibited in terms of providing more information about things such as food security, waste management, and more like waste management issues and agriculture. As the government, we as the government and local municipalities, we can help in making sure that people are more aware of those issues such as food security and waste management.
But young people, Stabisile, when they have to learn about protecting the environment, protecting their future, if you go to most of the township, there are no recycling projects. When somebody takes a can of cold drink, after drinking from it, they throw it on the street. Why is it that up to so far, young people have not been reached at that level? Like you said earlier, young people in rural areas don't have information about such.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is all about education, because besides education, some of these people do know that if I litter, I will contribute to emitting the environment, and others do know that if I litter, maybe nothing is going to happen. So it goes with education. We have to persist their education to everyone. And then the other thing is that it's ignorance. We as the youth, we are very ignorant about many issues. So we should just keep trying to understand and engage in things so that we'll be informed about many things.
Please deal with this issue of ignorance regarding information concerning climate change and how the environment is affected. Because young people would say, why should I care about climate change when we don't have sports facilities? Why should I care when I don't have money to go to varsity to learn? I don't even have a job as a young people. So then, let us fry.
The issue of ignorance is very important in a sense that, as I mentioned before, that we need to educate the youth. We as the youth need to participate in making sure that the world we live in is very clean. We need to make sure that the world we live in, we are able to do waste management projects, and also in making sure that we shy away from being ignorant and take a step forward in terms of playing a role in reducing things that lead to climate change, such as doing more waste management project, food security, and also making more people aware and understand climate change in a very more simpler way.
What about access to resources and financing regarding these projects that you're talking about?
Yes, one of the key elements that I mentioned in terms of our youth project is that one of the plans is that we skills development, access to funding, access to sponsorship were also the main points put out there as the youth to voice out that these are the things that we would like to put forward and also to have access to, which can also lead to the youth participating more and also shying away from being ignorant.
How much money have you gotten?
In terms of funding, I am not in a position to confirm the funding, but if we partner, we can also take this initiative forward in terms of making the voice of the youth heard.
Well, we've been talking about global funding, but locally here, we have 9 provinces. I would wonder the youth in all the provinces that would have keen interest in participating in these awareness programs. The young people are concerned as well, but do you think that you are able to reach them?
The point of reaching the youth, it's not enough, but then into some areas we are trying to reach.
Okay, well, enough can be done to try and reach out to all the young people, whether in suburban areas, in townships, and even in rural areas. Well, thank you very much to Stabile Gume from the Women Leadership Project, and from the Department of Environmental Affairs is Tembi Mahlangu. Ladies, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break and see you shortly. We're talking on the issues. Welcome back. We're coming to you live from the Durban ICC. This is Durban Dialogues, as world leaders gathered at the ICC to negotiate ways of mitigating the effects of climate change. Youths from different southern African states held a youth summit to share amongst themselves useful information about climate change and its effects. The Africa Youth on Climate Change Summit focused on what the youth can do to help mitigate the effects of climate change. The event was organized by the Department of Environmental Affairs in conjunction with non-governmental organizations. Here's the report by Vusi Langa.
Abantu abasha yibo abazodla ifa lomhlaba esikhathini esizayo. Manje ke kusezandleni zabo uqinisekisa ukuthi ke bathola ulwazi olwanele ngeindaba zokuguquguquka kwesimo sezulu. Uhulumeni wenzani ke ngempela uqinisekisa imfundiso entsheni ngeclimate change?
We've taken the climate train around the country that has gone from Cape Town to arrive in Durban, traversing, crisscrossing the country to 17 towns and villages, educating people about climate change. We've had hundreds of school children coming to the climate train, being educated through a fun, interactive way. We've also had young people, and I must say very vocal young people, who have come to the climate train and expressed themselves about what their needs are for education.
Yona intsha ngokwayo inalo na ulwazi futhi ke ilithola ngokwanele na ulwazi ngeclimate change.
The government still has a lot to do to bring it, to bring it to the youth's face, and so that's why I'm advocating for, what can I do, because then I need to train myself and then train others, because if I wait for the government, man, I just might wait too long.
I think government is doing something, and it's noticeable, but it's certainly not enough. They need to be able to work with people who can be able to assist them. They cannot, as a government, go to every aspect of the earth or every aspect of the country. So this is a good initiative to actually find out where the young people are, who have interest, who can be able to then take it further. Awareness needs to be there for them to be able to make the choices that they need to make when it comes to environmental choices.
I think the information is out there, but we lack in, telling young people how to implement these programs or the information that is being given within their own environments. So it's just a generic information that's being taken out there, but how do you relate it to your immediate environment? I think that's where our government is lacking.
That's our specific focus on young people this Sunday evening. You're still watching the Durban Dialogues live from the ICC. Let me introduce the new guest now on our show. And of course, we welcome Ferial Adams from Greenpeace. Thank you very much for joining us on Durban Dialogues.
Pleasure.
And we are joined by Dora Marema from Gender CC, Women Climate Justice. Thank you very much for coming as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
What has been some of the interesting issues for you regarding how COP17 has gone so far? Have we addressed the important issues and taking a position in terms of the future?
I think that the talks are very difficult, because obviously, one of the key issues has been the second commitment period for the Kyoto Protocol, and there has been some very interesting developments, but I think there is still some kind of hesitation for countries to commit to it. There's something around kind of really elongating the period, the second commitment period. We're looking at a period of 5 years, but it's now being talked about more than 5 years, which of course is not something that we're really happy about. And one other critical issue is an issue around the issue of climate finance, the green climate fund in particular. We're hoping that it won't be reopened, the draft document that was brought to COP17, but is now renegotiated. There has been some contact sessions around it, and we're really not sure if that will be able to yield.
Another thing that people are not sure about is whether the Kyoto Protocol is actually dead at COP17, and other people are saying that it's outdated, and therefore there must be new agreements, and other countries have been non-committal to it.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge, because the Kyoto has been the only instrument, legal instrument that has been around, and of course we've been advocating for it to be improved, because there are things inside it that we don't like the carbon market mechanisms, but certainly it's something that I think needs to be improved. We cannot throw everything that happened, that has been put together so far. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the ambition is to have a lot more countries sign into the Kyoto Protocol, and and that's exactly what we're looking for.
We'll get to other specifics. I'll be very much interested in what Greenpeace has to say about the naughty boys, the COP17. Canada, for example, being non-committal. Earlier when we arrived here, they wanted to back out of the negotiations.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us the talks have been extremely slow, and it's very worrying because we needed to make much more progress for when the high-level ministers arrive next week. And yes, we knew that Canada was not going to commit to a second commitment period, so that was not shocking. What we're finding is that, yes, there are big troublemakers, and the United States is one of them. They're causing a lot of blockages on different levels and in different discussions, especially in the Green Climate Fund. So, in terms of moving forward, we're saying that we need to we're asking governments to say, put the United States aside, let's try and find a solution and move forward without them.
Why are we having other countries not wanting to commit to new agreements, or perhaps to just ratify the Kyoto Protocol and then the other issues will be corrected later?
I think in many of these countries it's about national interests. So if you look at Canada, it's the issue of the tar sands, a highly polluting industry. And not committing means that they can carry on doing as they want to. So that's the issue. It's about national interest and the control of industries and fossil fuel industries within these delegations.
Now, talking about climate justice issues, we look at how Africa has actually suffered from global warming. I mean, we can look at the drought in the Horn of Africa. Here in South Africa, it's too hot or it's too cold. Many people tend to suffer. Yes, I do acknowledge that women and children also are affected. But then for climate justice, from your perspective, how do you address these issues when you're facing these big countries?
Absolutely. I know that Africa has been suffering a lot of these climate disasters, and I want to say to you that of course these are countries that are impacted, but we need to understand that it's not just everybody within a country. Take for example South Africa, who's been impacted. There are players, there are people inside this country that are benefiting a lot more than others. If we talk about the issues of energy security and energy access, a lot of people are still energy poor. They don't have energy security. A lot of those are women, and as a result, the children that are so dependent on those women. And I think what when you talk about the issue of justice, it also has to happen within countries as well. So we need to be able to look inside and say who has been benefiting, who's a perpetrator, and who's not, and be able to respond in that way, and not have a blanket one size fits all.
Climate justice. Who has done wrong on what, and what kind of justice are you advocating for?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is the polluter shall pay principle. The UNFCCC itself has got a lot of principles that needs to be put into place when you talk about the issues of climate justice. There are countries that benefited, industrial countries, developed countries, the likes of the US and other European countries that have benefited by being industrialized way before. Some of the countries in the global south have kind of caught up on the issue of industrialization.
Let's catch up on that issue when we come back after the break. I know Greenpeace was very dramatic before COP17 started, and I was wondering if Feria would protest during this program live. But anyway, time for another short break, and of course Durban Dialogues returns shortly. Welcome back. You're watching the Durban Dialogues right here on SABC1 with me, Colin Limawane. And of course, let me introduce the guest again. We've got Dora Marema from the Gender CC Women Climate Justice, as well as from Greenpeace, Ferial Adams. Thank you very much again, guys, for staying with us. We were talking about who has to pay? The polluter must pay. That issue, can you tell us who has to pay who? Are you saying that Sasol or Eskom should pay for polluting, and who are they going to be punished by?
By the masses. We know many communities around Sasol's operations, around Eskom communities that have been impacted highly by their operations. In Sasolburg, for example, many of them are suffering from asthma and other skin diseases. So it's one of the highly polluted areas in terms of air pollution. And I think Sasol, if we're talking about justice in a country, within a country, they must pay those communities. I think that's the only fair thing, including Eskom. There are so many communities around Eskom operations who don't have access to electricity. Can you imagine? It's so ironic. And I think these are some of the things that we're talking about. So on a global scale, we're talking about developed countries who have to pay the countries in the global south for the historical emissions that they have contributed into our atmosphere.
But are these companies listening? Is government listening to the people? For example, we're constructing coal-fired stations because we want to increase the capacity of providing electricity for our citizens. Is that not a contradiction?
Yeah, it is a pure contradiction. How can we talk about cutting down our carbon emissions as a country? I mean, South Africa is one of the biggest polluters in Africa, and I think we need to take that leadership. We need to take the responsibility. The COP is on our side. We need to take responsibility. We need to show leadership. And if we're still talking about the coal-fired power stations, the issue of including nuclear as part of the renewable energy mix, we actually sending out a very confusing message. We need those resources to go to renewable energies like the sun and the wind, which we so much blessed with.
Greenpeace was very not only vocal but dramatic in all this, especially showing their voice that they're protesting. Do you think here at the negotiations, civil society is being given enough room to actually make the voice heard? Or if they are going to be at the University of KwaZulu-Natal and then the negotiators are here, the ICC, how are they going to hear each other?
I mean, I think that's exactly the problem. One of our slogans as Greenpeace is to say that the negotiators need to listen to the people and not the polluters. Minister Mashibane said a very interesting thing the other day. She said, it's our democratic right to march, talking about the Global Day of Action yesterday, and it is okay for people to be heard. And what we're saying, it's not enough to just hear us. They need to listen to what we are saying, and clearly they're not doing that at this point.
She says they are not listening. What's your view?
Yeah, absolutely. They're not listening. We just gave that example of saying, yes, we are hearing, yes, we acknowledge. But on the other side, the policies that they are making and the strategies that they are making are not actually following on what we're asking as civil society.
We've got environmental concerns here in South Africa regarding water pollution, even the air pollution that many people have raised concerns about. And she talked about people who fall sick, having asthma and all that. But paying people does not solve the problem for giving them compensation or taking care of their health. What is going to be done for the future? Because, I mean, the adults who are sick right now, we're going to have their children being sick as well. Their grandchildren will be sick as well. So this thing is actually a vicious cycle. Then how do you put an end to it?
So it's not paying people directly. It's actually using the money and ring-fencing it for projects that could help. So looking at renewable energy projects, energy efficiency projects, more sustainable projects is what you're looking at. And that will have a sustainable impact on jobs and livelihoods, etc. I mean, I think that would be a really good way for the South African government to go. And we are asking them. We're saying that even in this negotiation, it's time to show leadership. So if we come to the end of next week, because really we've got 131 pages to discuss, when we come to the end of next week and we decide that this is really not a good deal, we are asking them to stand up to the plate and admit that this is not a good deal and we don't want to sign it. We don't want to put South Africa's name on a bad deal.
Tell me about the issues that are specific regarding how do you think they could misrepresent South Africa. I was listening to the youth from Canada and the United States. They are vociferously opposed to some of the issues raised by their countries, and they are saying they are not representing their people. So from a South African perspective, and I'd like to get your view from that, where do you think the South African government would be erring in terms of the position that it has put forward here at COP17?
I think they would be erring if they don't take strong positions against countries who have been blocking the negotiations, because of the fact that they have this dilemma of being the COP president as well as a negotiator. It's a very thin line that they have to walk, and I think they're finding it difficult. So they're not coming out strong against. So, for example, the United States, they've blocked in many areas of the negotiations already, and we are saying, will South Africa have the courage to tell the United States, step out of the way so we can move on and actually find a binding deal that will be better for the climate?
It would be surprising, because during the racism conference we heard Israel and the United States walking out. So it's not surprising that even here the negotiations we still have what we term the naughty boys who are deterring the discussions. So then what must be done? Because I can see that there's actually a problem regarding who has to listen to who has to do what, in hearing the voices of the people that we've seen around the ICC here.
Yeah, if you ask me, I think the South African government would be erring if they go ahead with some sort of an agreement, even though it's not going to help us reduce our carbon emissions. Because I think there's that thread, as my colleague here has indicated. I think they might want to be able to have Durban having achieved something, even though it won't be credible. So I think for me, it will be unjust to the South African nation if South Africa can push to have some sort of a deal out of Durban, even though it's an empty deal. For me, it will be really highly unjust to us as a nation for us to have some sort of an outcome that might include your likes of the US, just because they just wanting an empty deal, to have something that is not going to help the world cut down their own carbon emissions. So if it's going to be an agreement, it has to be legally binding. It has to be highly ambitious in terms of the developing countries' carbon, the way that they're going to cut down their emissions. We need something that is really legal and something that is highly ambitious to help the world cut down. There's no time. We cannot wait anymore.
Legally binding agreement and an agreement where any country can just have voluntary pledges. What do you think about the two dichotomies?
No, I think if we have a legally binding agreement, you can't have voluntary pledges, because the pledges we have at the moment, which is voluntary, if we calculate it all and add it all up, it's not going to get us to below 2 degrees, which is the target at the moment, or 1.5, impossible. You're looking at going to 4 to 5 degrees Celsius increase. So those pledges are not going to work. You need to have higher ambition, increased emission reductions, and it has to be in a legally binding agreement.
Now, the green economy, creating jobs, because agriculture is really affected, and the job sector, the commercial sectors, farmers have been affected. Their profits have gone down by almost 43% as it has been reported. So what do you think then should happen regarding that going forward, looking at deforestation, looking at food production and sustainable development?
There has to be a paradigm shift in terms of agriculture, in terms of forestry, in terms of energy production as well. We cannot continue to rely to feed the nation of this country using commercial farmers. We need to decentralize. We need to support small-scale producers. Women are the majority of them. They are already doing it. If you want to come up with the energy, if we want to ensure food security, we need to work with people to produce food where they are. Cut down on transport emissions to have ZZ2 transporting tomatoes from Limpopo coming to Johannesburg. It's absolutely unsustainable.
The question has been, is COP17 going to be another talk shop, a waste of time? Other people saying it's going to be a futile exercise, because you will see big countries are going to actually be problematic at the negotiations. What can we say about COP17 so far as we draw to a close?
Well, like I said, last week was rather slow, and we worried because we've got 131 pages of text that needs to be put forward to the high-level ministers meeting next week for approval. There's no way they're going to get through 131 pages of text. So we're saying that the countries that agree, they need to tell the big countries, and the biggest blocker has been the United States, to tell the to actually move ahead without the United States. We need to get to a deal. We need to deal with catastrophic climate change. And if it means leaving the United States behind, that's what we must do. They've always promised and never delivered.
All right, that's Ferial Adams from Greenpeace. And of course, just very briefly, we saw you protesting against these coal-fired power stations. What's going to happen from now? How are you going to engage with Eskom to resolve your concerns?
We have different levels of engagement, and I guess you'll have to wait and see. Part of it is having actual meetings with them, and part of it would be as Greenpeace does.
All right. As we reach the end of the show, of course, we'll be giving our guests telling us their view to regarding COP17, and we'll be wrapping up. So let's take a short break, and we'll be back after this. Okay, the beautiful sight and sound of the warmest city in the country, Durban. Welcome back. As we reach the end of the show, I'd like our guests to give us their final assertions on the hard work ahead for policy on climate change. And of course, I'm still with Ferial Adams from Greenpeace, and we still have Dora Marema from Gender CC, Women Climate Justice. Before the break, you talked about something very interesting regarding transportation. And I would like to link this with the polluter must pay notion. Actually, I have a problem with that, because when an individual buys a car and the government is claiming that individual motorists are polluting, they pay emission tax. So it seems like motorists are the ones who are suffering at the moment. Yeah. They are being taxed, they feel it in the pocket.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's a way of trying to get people to start using public transport. So I think we need to sort out our public transport as a country to make sure that there is reliable public transport, so that many of us can start moving outside, out of our cars into the public transport mode. So there is no other way about it, because if you look at the amount of cars that get onto the road, they have too many, and that's a huge contribution. Transport is one of the highest contributors of climate change in South Africa, and we have to do something about it. And unfortunately, it means we got to get out of the cars into the public transport.
And surely that affects, it causes air pollution as well. And Greenpeace has actually raised concern regarding how cars pollute on the highways and the byways of the country, and how actually Eskom and Sasol as well pollute the areas around them.
I'm not sure about the transport one. We haven't actually done any research on transport, but we have done quite a bit of research in terms of the true cost of coal, and that looks at the impacts, the hidden costs that we are seeing, that we are not paying, that we are paying and not seeing. So it's the impacts on health, the mining, climate change, and those are the kinds of things that we're saying. While government says coal is cheap, it's not really cheap, because we're paying. When Kusile is up and running, it will cost us South Africans 60 billion rands a year to deal with the pollution on water, the impacts on health, the impacts from mining, and the impacts on climate change.
And yet, on the other hand, the price of electricity has gone up. It's the public that suffers. People in the townships are the ones who have to pay more for electricity.
Absolutely. Those are the culprits. Women, again, are the ones that are in the forefront. Even free basic electricity for many is not free. You'll be surprised because those vendors are actually charging these people to get access. But even so, even with that being available where they've got grid, these people are not able to afford to buy electricity and to use it for cooking and everything. So it's issues around energy access. We shouldn't only focus on electricity. There are other ways in which we can start bringing forms of other forms of energy in the homes to have for different uses of energy. Mm-hmm. So we have to shift from we've got coal, we have to have electricity. We've got uranium, we have to have nuclear. We need to delink those two.
But having to transform, we have the issues of green economy, but then the technologies and transfer. We seem to be moving at a very slow pace regarding that, especially in Africa.
I think it is a slow pace, but I think that government is making a mistake by saying that we will move towards technology transfer and gain technology once we get the international agreement on finance and technology. South Africa has moved far beyond its means and its weight in terms of the economic powers. So we cannot use that excuse anymore. We can move forward. And also, when it comes to nuclear, which is technically advanced technology, which is really not working anywhere in the world, so that's how government puts it forward, as this is advanced technology and it's not really working, they're ready to put out 1 trillion rand for it. Mm-hmm. So if they can put out the money for that, then surely they can find the money for renewable energy, which is a proven technology and it's working. Energy efficiency is a low-hanging fruit. Why are they so slow on that? And those are the questions we need to ask. In terms of electricity and electricity supply, all the government is supplying right now, 45% of the amount of electricity we're using is used up by 36 companies. Not people, not communities, 36 companies. And that says a lot in terms of what Dora is talking about, environmental justice, where the people who are using the most need to pay the most.
Mm-hmm. So now, going ahead, we talked about agriculture. As we're going to wrap up now, food security has been the issue of primary concern to many people as climate change affects agriculture, as we have already alluded to that. So going forward, the issues you're raising now, I can hear them being raised, but at the press conferences, at the plenary sessions, I don't hear them echoed that very much. It seems like civil society, young people and women organizations are saying this, but actually the response from the negotiators and government, we're not hearing them saying this. Then how are you going to push this forward?
Yeah, I think we will continue to push. I mean, we've got a presence here. We brought with us a group of women. Some of people could have seen the rural women gathering at the Speaker's Corner the other day. They've been meeting from last week. They continue to meet until tomorrow on Monday to be able to work together to share some of the indigenous knowledge, which is what we actually need, some of that, to be able to fight the impacts of climate change. And I think we will lobby. We will continue to bring our voice. We will have inside and outside strategies for us to be able to influence these negotiations. I think for me, the biggest work has to happen at home. So we have to continue lobbying our own governments, even though we might not come out of COP17 with a real agreement or with an effective agreement. We need to go back and lobby within our own countries. That's what we're telling our people. We need to put pressure before the COP comes at the end of the year.
You were saying that the negotiations have been slow since the beginning of the week. Do we really have to wait for Qatar to realize something substantial and tangible at the end of the week?
I think that would be very depressing if that's the case. And like Dora is saying, is that we need to be upfront and honest at the end of this COP and say whether it's been a failure or not. We mustn't be afraid to say that. And we are asking the South African governments to be brave enough not to sign our name on a bad deal.
Okay. Thank you very much, Heather. You've been listening to Ferial Adams from Greenpeace, as well as Dora Marema from Gender CC, which is the Women Climate Justice. And of course, ladies, thank you very much for joining us. You've been so great on our show this evening. And of course, it's very clear that country delegates have a tough week ahead, and the only hope is that they will bear the weight of saving the world's environment and its climate. I'm Colin Limawane, and you've been watching another live show of the Durban Dialogues, and I can say in Zulu, sibonga kakhulu ukuthi bewuna nathi kuhlelo lwethu uDurban Dialogue. And of course, thank you very much for joining us. Salane kahle.